Let's do this.
Let's do this.
Ryan, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. For the last couple of days, I've learned a lot. The one analogy that I really liked, which I really wanted you to explain a little more on the four-stage analogy on how autonomous cars are compared to the AI development that's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. You've heard maybe of the 5 stages of autonomous driving. If you haven't, it was invented maybe or at least conceptualized a few years ago when Apple and Tesla and so many other manufacturers were really on the journey to create autonomous cars. Stage 1, it's kind of like you're driving and you go a little bit over the yellow line, then your steering wheel is going to vibrate or something like that. It's going to tell you, hey, get back on the road.
Yeah.
Goes all the way up through progressively more autonomous stages till you get to stage 5. Stage 5 is kind of like you, your wife, your kid, your best friend are in the back seat playing checkers with each other.
Yeah.
So when I think about AI-assisted development, when I think about AI-assisted engineering, I kind of like to borrow from that same concept. Stage 1 is really where we all started out. What was that, 5-6 years ago? So I happened to work at GitHub at the time. I was leading the team responsible for GitHub Copilot. And we came up with this ghost text, this predictive text.
Okay.
And then it anticipates 1 to 10 lines ahead of wherever you're typing. Here's the function or the class that you might have written.
Yeah.
That's stage 1. It certainly saves us a few keystrokes, as it were, but it's not necessarily going to write an application for you. All right. Stage 2 was chat. Chat came out, maybe a year and a half later, something like that. Essentially, it allows you as a developer to ask questions about the code that is directly in front of you, maybe to explain a particular file, maybe to make some changes, add code comments to this file. Still very useful, but elementary. Stage 3. Stage 3 is, I think, where most developers really spend their days today using AI assistants. In this case, yes, I'm still using a chat window of some kind, but I'm asking questions not about a single file, but about many components. I'm asking, hey, how does this particular view interact with the data model? So it actually has to reason over the view, the model, the controller, maybe even a connection back to a database. So I'm now thinking really about my application rather than a single file that's in front of me. Stage 4, arguably, is what we're all just experimenting with, maybe finding some limited use cases where we are successful today. Stage 4 is effectively giving the model or the agent some instructions and then allowing it to respond into an SDLC event of some kind or software development lifecycle event of some kind. So a good example of this is maybe an AI-assisted code review. As a developer, I submit some code. Then the agent picks up. It analyzes the code. It may even analyze some documentation that my team has provided to essentially reflect back how the code could be improved in some way. Some of it is applying best practices and principles that the model already has baked into it from just the general knowledge out there in the universe about software development, but some of it is then informed by your team's documentation and instructions. Stage 4 is particularly useful today, or I think most folks are finding success with it, in scenarios that are non-destructive. A code review, it's just going to return back some information. You can choose whether or not to interact with it, to respond with it in any way, but ultimately the agent is not going to go do a delete star from a particular database. Stage 5 is what collectively we all have a shared vision for. It's that L5, L6 SWE agent that is going out there and just on its own volition solving problems for you. You might say you are an L5 SWE, you're responsible for performing SRE duties for this particular application. Go make sure that we stay online all the time in maximum availability. And it is just out there looking for spikes in critical errors. It is evaluating deployments up against SBOMs and critical known vulnerabilities so that it can do a rollback if there's ever a vulnerability discovered in a dependency that's in that application. but it's the agent acting on its own. So clearly, that is not where we are at today.
Okay.
We're in that little, like that gradient between stage 3, a developer asking questions of the model, making requests of the model to make large changes. This is if you're using Gemini CLI, if you're using Cursor, if you're using Windsurf or Devin, most of these developer tools are operating in that stage 3 space. A few instances, we're reaching towards stage 4. And I think we'll get there eventually. We're going to get there to stage 5.
Yeah.
It's going to be a few years, though.
So you, absolutely. So you spearhead Gemini Code Assist and Gemini CLI at Google.
Yep.
I'm sure you probably are talking to your customers. You just mentioned that we're not there yet. This is based off how you see it or based off how you're getting feedback from your customers?
I see it the way I see it
Okay.
because customers tell me that's what they're seeing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you maybe another example here, right? So I was talking to a company in Berlin, I think they're Berlin-based, called Delivery Hero.
Okay.
They were using Gemini CLI essentially to monitor critical errors in their production environment so that when their SREs got notified that there was a deployment failure of some kind, that Gemini CLI would effectively analyze all the critical errors, look back at the bill of materials, and provide some hypotheses about what might have gone wrong so that the SRE could quickly respond to it and recover from the failed deployment faster than they might have otherwise.
Yep.
This is so important, not just because it reduces the time of that you're down, but also if that deployment failure happened at 1 o'clock in the morning, you're groggy. It's the difference between I don't get to go back to sleep tonight and I was woken up at 1 and I'm back in bed by 1:30. There's a real human value in that, not just a business value in that.
Sure.
But in this case, again, this is an example of the agent that is providing information back to the engineer in order for the engineer to go take action. So many other times when I talk to organizations, when I talk to engineers, and they're asking the model to go do something on their behalf, and they've taken a risk. They've taken a calculated risk and said, hey, model, I don't care if you go not only make a code change, but go ahead and merge that code change, and maybe even, no one has actually that I know of deployed it yet automatically.
Yeah.
Sure, it's happened somewhere, but no one I've talked to.
Yeah.
When you allow it to go merge the code change without any human oversight, I'm sure you've spent time inside of, working with any Cursor, Windsurf, any of these others. You ask it to go make a code change. How often does it get it absolutely perfectly right the first time?
Not the very first time.
Yeah, not the first time.
Yeah.
It required, eventually you get there.
Yeah.
Eventually you get there.
Absolutely.
But you've got to give a couple corrective nudges along the way. If you give the agent an instruction and then just trust that it's going to be able to do it and merge it, you're headed for danger. You're headed for disaster. And so I think one of the things that maybe another tells that I get, so also within my team, I've got the Dora research team.
Yep.
You're probably familiar with
familiar
Dora.
with it.
Yeah, it's been around for well over a decade now.
Yep.
So in this last year's report, one of the questions that we asked is, what is your trust level in AI and in agents? And by the way, 90% of the developers and the engineers and the software practitioners who responded were all using AI in their daily practice. So this was, the vast majority of us have already made the leap and we're using AI. That's no secret. But of those, 30% of them had low or very low trust in AI. And what this tells me is we know that AI is not going to get it right on the first time. Even when we're there and we're present, it's not always possible to get it to do exactly what we want. We're still in a trust building phase with AI, and we're still in a kind of, I want to call it a reliability phase. And by that I don't mean uptime. I mean that it produces reliable and consistent positive outcomes. AI is at a place where right now both we haven't learned how to prompt it in order to get those reliable outcomes, and the technology itself has got enough of that little chaos dust in it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that it's
Agreed.
still a little unpredictable.
Yep. So one of the things that you've mentioned, which really caught my attention, is how job roles are getting merged.
Yeah.
You did talk about
Yeah.
how product teams, you're recommending product teams to not just work on specs, but also start doing prototypes.
Yeah.
Help us understand why that merge and why is it essential?
Love it, love it. Okay, yeah, a few things. One, I see my engineering teams
Okay.
spending a lot less time, it's not zero time,
Okay.
but a lot less time writing if then else statements,
Yeah.
select case statements. We're, as engineers using an AI first methodology, we are spending more time writing requirements. And they're often very technical requirements, but nevertheless, we're writing those technical requirements in order to guide the agents to produce outcomes that are many more lines of code that we could have written in the same amount of time. At the same time, we're making our engineers more efficient, more effective. We're also reducing the barriers for folks who have historically and traditionally participate in the software development practice, but we're not the engineers themselves. It's much easier for them to now at least produce prototypes.
Yeah.
So like my product managers can write a reasonably technical specification
Yep.
and produce a prototype. My designers can actually, yes, they've always been working inside of Figma and things like that, but they can now also send those Figma mockups over to Gemini CLI,
Yep.
have it interpret it, and actually produce a working prototype.
Absolutely.
And a working prototype, by the way, that's also based upon our own existing UI component libraries.
Not creating something new.
They're not creating something new, they're just reassembling the components
Yeah.
in the code that was already there. Now, why is this important? It's like from a software development perspective. When we're working in abstractions, right? If it's a product manager who's writing a giant requirements doc, we're working at a layer of abstraction. And that means that when you're working in abstraction, it's hard to understand and to get your hands around the tactile details. Will this solution actually work?
Yeah.
Will it be not just something that is functionally useful, but that is enjoyable to use?
Yeah.
And I build developer tools. I care a lot about the ergonomics of these tools. You should want to play with it and create with it and tinker and experiment, because it's that creative spark that makes software development.
The aha moment you get right when you
Yes.
actually see it in action.
Yes. So I ask my product managers, I want demos, not memos. I want you creating
love it.
prototypes. I want you helping us realize whether or not this is going to be useful and fun and creative. Now, if you take those trends, those early trends, what that suggests is that if my product managers are spending more time creating software, at least prototypes, if my engineers are spending more time writing prompts, which kind of look a little bit like a specification in some way, there is a little bit of a convergence here in at least the job skill sets of our teams. And I think you could argue that this means that we're all starting to look a little bit more, I'm going to call it a creator, a builder. I don't have a name for it yet. But there's going to be more overlap in the Venn diagram. Now, here's the extra little bit of color that I want to put on that in our conversation yesterday I didn't get to. So, does that mean that we're just going to have one job description 10 years from now? I'm not talking about next month. I'm talking about far off, right? That we're just going to have one creator job description that we all have to participate in. I don't think so. Here's what I think is going to happen. I have a series of life experiences that make me particularly empathetic when it comes to customer needs. I have a set of life experiences that make me really have good taste when it comes to design. By the way, I'm not saying these are necessarily true of me, but I'm just providing examples. Maybe you have a set of life experiences that make it so that you're really good at anticipating failure points, and you're really good at seeing what could go wrong at a time, right? Those are the types of qualities that tend to be really well associated with a really excellent engineer. But if I'm really good at anticipating customer needs and being empathetic to how a customer might interact with the user interface, maybe I've got better design sensibilities. We each are bringing we are baked into our personalities, our experiences, our taste, our domain expertise. We're still bringing something that is unique and special to that. Yes, some of the tools that we use might have overlap in the skills required to deploy and make use of those tools, but that doesn't mean we don't have domain expertise.
Understood.
And so this is where I think, even though there is a convergence in the tools that we're using, the actual domain expertise that we bring to our jobs, to our projects, is still going to be, every person has something unique and special to bring.
Yeah. You seem to have read my mind. My next question was, like, you've been living in the world of product for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And majority of the product managers that I've seen, be it LinkedIn, be it people I met today, they have engineering background.
Yeah.
And what is that line that they have to cross to come out of engineering role to become a product manager?
Yeah. I started my career as an engineer. So I spent 10 years, give or take a little bit, as an engineer. It turns out in my case, I also ended up going the startup route. And you go the startup route, you're wearing a different hat.
Different hats, yeah.
Every day. I think that the engineers that I've known who ended up becoming product managers, and by the way, at least in my particular product category, just about every product manager was an engineer at some point because our customers are engineers. But I think the thing that crosses over from engineer to product manager is that you want to spend more time understanding the way that your tools are used. That you spend more time thinking a little bit about, okay, what are the problems that other people have that are worth solving? Whereas the engineers that I've known are more interested in spending their time figuring out not what should the destination be, but how do I get to the destination?
Yeah.
And so engineers, if they want to cross over into product, I would encourage them to spend time talking to the users of whatever their product happens to be. It could be dev tools, it could be banking applications, it could be toys.
Yeah, talk to customers, know what they want.
Spend time talking to them, spend time immersing yourself in that, and then spend time talking to all of the folks who pick up the work of the engineer after their check-in, right? Spend time talking to the marketers, to the folks writing documentation. A product manager's job, we have one job. If I, as a product manager, one job, it's to create clarity. That is my job, is to create clarity. The trick is that I have to create clarity not just for my engineering team, but I also have to create that same clarity for my marketing team, my documentation team, my customer support team, my revenue team, my solution engineers, my legal team, my privacy team. And ultimately, what every single one of those kind of other disciplines want to know is, why are we doing this?
Clarity through chaos.
Clarity, hopefully, in the clarity in the midst of chaos.
Yes.
How about that?
Yes. That's a great answer, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
And another piece. A few years ago, we used to talk about 12-month plan, 18-month plan. I don't think people are talking, especially the likes of Google. Releases products every week. What's the new normal now? Is it 15-day plan or 30-day plan?
Oh, it's so funny. When I took the job at Google roughly a year and a half ago, it was right about the time that they were starting annual planning kind of thing. And I basically just said, no, I'm not going to do this. No, because it's nonsensical. There's no way that I could tell you where the business is going to be, let alone where the technology is going to be a year from now. Again, I'm spending a lot of time in AI where it's a very fast-moving machine. Now I'm older, I'm wiser. I've got a more nuanced take on it. So
fine-tuned.
Fine-tuned. I've done some post-training, and now here's how I think about it today. You're absolutely right. Like, really, we plan on roughly, I would say, a 60 to 90-day horizon with relatively high confidence. So we know where we're going to be 3 months from now from an engineering perspective.
Okay.
New information will always come. Like, we actually practice continuous planning. So literally every week we come back together and we look at the backlog and say, what new information did we get this week? How does that need to change our list of priorities? And how do we maybe need to adjust our execution plans, let alone our strategy, based upon that new information? Hopefully, by the way, our strategy is not changing every week. That's failure mode. But our execution plan might change every week. And even as we do that, there are things that do have to happen on a longer time horizon. Our strategy, by the way, our strategy should probably get an update about maybe twice a year.
Okay.
Like, you should set big goals that leave a lot of latitude for the execution and how you're going to get there.
Okay.
Also, at least within, I'll call it multinational organizations, there are a lot of disciplines whose year is contractually set based upon the laws of their country, right? So sales teams are a good example of this. Their compensation is set at the beginning of the year, and you really need, for long-term planning purposes, to be able to say, here are the long-term goals for the business, here's how we want to incentivize our sales team. And so you need to be able to actually have annual planning for these big marketing budget conversations, these sales incentive conversations. And that's why the product strategy, we try to update substantially, only roughly twice a year. This also, I had to look this up the other day. So it's going to take a bit of a roundabout way, but trust me, we're going to get there.
Sure,
Hang in with me.
Yep.
Humans only began agriculture about 17,000 years ago. Okay. Now, I know 17,000 years is a lot, but actually in the scheme of human beings, like, it's not that long. Only 17,000 years ago were we able to start to plan seasons.
Yes.
We're still the same organic, biological things that were out there 17,000 years ago.
Very true.
And so our ability to really process change that quickly, it's still adapting, and we are still evolving. We need a certain amount of stability just to be able to develop the domain expertise, develop the familiarity with the product that we're building, build that long-term empathy with our customers. And that can't happen and like really radically change week to week to week. Yeah. And so there's a bit of a human aspect of this as well. We just need stability in terms of the goals that we're pursuing. And so the human thing to do is also to provide a long horizon that we can plan against.
Yeah, so that's a great answer again. Last but not the least, again, I personally started using Gemini CLI and Code Assist. I don't know how many apps that I deployed lightning fast, and how many apps has huge potential actually solving real world problems through an app form.
Awesome.
I wanted to ask, given with these velocity of updates, could you give us some teasers and as to what's coming in next near few months and near future from Google?
Yeah, so we're gonna cherry pick just a couple. There's a long list. Particular areas of focus. So I'll start at developer experience, and then I'll bridge up to more like team-based stuff. So from a developer experience perspective, really focused on extensibility.
Okay.
When you can integrate these development tools with a broad range of other kind of services and tools that you're using, whether that is Jira or ServiceNow or GitHub or Postman or LaunchDarkly or whatever. We're all using a gazillion of these different tools, and no developer works with a single narrow tool set. They have to switch tools, and so we want Gemini CLI to be able to integrate neatly with all of those.
Okay.
Along with that, we see a lot of teams really focusing on how do I do more in parallel? How do I equip these agents with more power? And so the ability to parallelize and specialize through things like sub-agents, background agents, and move not just from the compute that is right there on my laptop in front of me, but also how do I start to deploy these agents in such a way that they can respond to SDLC events? Remember earlier I was talking about stage 3 to stage 4 of autonomous coding, we'll call it. Autonomous engineering, that's better. Autonomous engineering. Bridging that, starting to bridge there into stage 4. Let's see here. Also, the models are always improving. You can absolutely expect dramatic improvements to the Gemini series of models. And then as I elevate here as well into kind of some of the more organizational aspects, both individuals and organizations should be concerned about security. We should all be
non-negotiable.
Yes, non-negotiable. I don't want my personal laptop to be borked, and you don't want your company's infrastructure to be borked. Working on essentially establishing a sandbox or a boundary, not just for the single agent that is running, but also for the individual tools and sub-agents that are running, because you really want to be able to isolate each one of them, in addition to isolating the calling agent or the macro agent. Then on the observability side of things, we are, as an industry, software development tends to focus an awful lot on observability for the applications that we deploy. Historically, we have invested less, I won't say zero, less in the tools that we use internally. That has definitely changed in the last few years. More and more organizations are asking for observability around the tools that they're using internally for good reasons. Like, it's expensive to burn through those tokens. We also should all be practicing continuous improvement. Every single day I ask, how could I do my job a little bit better? And the only way that I can really answer that, yes, there's my own intuition and there's me just knowing my job, but it's also useful to be able to have a mirror, quantitative data that I can use to reflect back and say, hey, is my perception reality in terms of how I'm using these? And so having good observability is a big one. And then last year, I would say, when I think about the tools that we use as developers, every developer I've ever known has usually 3 windows that are open on their desktop. They've got their IDE, they've got their command line, and they've got a browser window. And so really here, I'm focusing on how do I meet the needs in all 3 of those categories. So command line, you've mentioned Gemini CLI, so that one's clearly checked, done, right? IDEs, we've already got IDE extensions for VS Code and JetBrains. Although you may know, I'm sure many folks watching this video know, Google, can't say we acquired, we had a licensing event and a transaction with the folks over at Windsurf several months ago. So we're collaborating very closely with them to make sure that we are making good use of that I call it transaction, we're going to call it transaction. And so really want to make sure that Google is participating in the IDE as an important surface for creativity. And I said browser. If you think of the browser really as being representative of the cloud in general here, that bridge from stage 3 to stage 4, from developer at their laptop asking questions to developer has unleashed the agent to respond to SDLC events. That's only only possible when we move CLI into the cloud. And our architectural approach to that is really take Gemini CLI as a infinitely extensible orchestrator, put it into a container, and then equip it with hooks and SDKs that allow you, and APIs that allow you to invoke it from all of the other tools that you're using, whether that's Slack, or that's Gmail, or that's your CI system, or that is anywhere in your SDLC.
Looks like there's lots of updates coming.
Always.
Thank you so much for giving your time.
Yes, dude. Absolutely.
And thank you so much for sharing insights. I had really enjoyed our conversation and really appreciate you again for taking time.
Same, my friend.